So I noticed you said that, like, you weren't cool with using, like, abortion as a form of birth control. Yes, I gotta know why not. You know, what's the big deal with that?
I feel bad for them. I think one thing
Why?
is
But why? You,
That would mess up your social
they
standards.
were hoping. So I understand that they're kind of under a sort of misconception.
Is that they were stretching really far to get privacy to mean that you can now have an abortion. I don't know where you would find consciousness within the Constitution.
And they're hitting the I want to live button again and again with a little deformed flipper type thing, right? And then the parents are like, no, disregard that. This is costing us loads of money. I'm sick of this kid. Can you just get the needles out? And like, what would you do then?
You know, there's some people who are going to be like, well, you know, you can't waste your sperm because that's a potential human.
Well, of course it is. This is a question that has you know, escaped philosophers for literal fucking generations. You acting like it's just, oh well, life begins here when I say it does, essentially, or when, you know.
No, not when I say it does. It's not when life
Okay.
begins.
That he thinks the experience between somebody who has gender dysphoria and somebody who doesn't is so drastically different that you can't put them in the same box together. I've done 100, 200 pro-life debates. I don't think I ever debated whether or not something is a life. Because
I think it's maybe because I considered life to be the hard cutoff at birth, so everything before that isn't life, and that might cloud my judgment here.
So would you, if a woman went in at 8 months and said...
Listen, I take the Fabian Liberty argument here, alright? I think he is insane, but I like the option of just the evictionist to a certain degree. Like,
okay, that's good.
I don't know, I feel that there are other
I understand. Anyway, I've got someone that wants to talk. Should we bring them in?
Let's go.
Hello, how's it going, mate? Hey, coming up. Hey, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, you too.
Right.
Looks like
I
the
think you can
storm
just hop in,
passed.
can't you, normally? Oh, that's good. I think you can hop. I think mods have. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You're here now. Speak to us. What's going on? What do you want to say?
The only thing I feel has been like kind of weird about the whole abortion debate is everybody talking about like potentiality and that type of shit. I think it's fine to mourn that kind of thing. Like I feel like we do that all the time when it's not like regarding life specifically. So hypothetically say like you were built to be a baseball player. You were very good. And then like you just decided to not do that. Like I think it's fine to look back on that and feel weird about it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, you're saying that like you understand, or you're saying that it makes sense that you would mourn the potential of something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe I differ with most of people on the left with this kind of shit. I don't think that's an extreme thing.
Yeah, I found it
saying that like mourning nothing is like that's a weirder way to phrase that to me because obviously it's not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I cut you off a second ago. My bad.
Yeah, I was listening to Destiny on the panel, on Mr. Girl's panel from last night, and I found it really odd because I know before him and Silly Serious were talking about like the fact that they both think it's morally wrong and that like they think that like a lot of people just kind of overlook whether or not it's morally wrong to kill a fetus, and that like people actually look at this as a human, and that like there's but we can look at like other consequences and other outcomes and still say that like abortion is a moral necessity without saying that it's just a clump of cells. But it seems like he switched on that position on that panel last night. So I felt like that was kind of like a trend over Twitch, is that more and more people were kind of taking on that position. And now I wonder if that's gonna switch back and go back the other direction with him taking a new position again.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair of you. Did anyone have anything like, or did you disagree with anything else like super specifically?
I mean, that I think the thing about potentiality was I was the one making the argument for potentiality. I don't know if Chud disagreed with that.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Okay. Okay. What, Hydra, what's your take on euthanasia?
Shit. Can you kind of define what you mean by that?
Someone goes to the doctor and says, "Listen, I'm sick of all this. I want to end my life," and the doctor gets a needle out and just goes, kills him there and then.
I'm assuming this person is not a minor.
Why would that make a difference?
I feel like, we'd say that minors can't make certain decisions. So
Okay, that's a good point. I sound like a pedo. Okay, let's. You've got me there. You got me on that one.
They have less agency.
I'm okay with like assisted suicide, if that's what you mean by this.
Okay, what if the kid is terminally ill and is going to die anyway, and they want to do it on their own terms?
But like in this hypothetical, the parents aren't cool with it. I'm assuming.
Well, no, the parents are sick of looking after them, so that fucking end it. It's costing us money.
I don't think I see anything morally like wrong there.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, wait a sec. Okay. Here's. I'm sorry. I'm coming up with the worst things, obviously, because that's the point, isn't it? You're trying to test the boundaries. Okay, what if there's a kid who is really disabled? Okay, and their quality of life is really bad, and they can't even talk properly. But they're gesturing. Basically, there's two big buttons, okay, and they can press the button. One button says "I want to live," "I want to die," and they're hitting the "I want to live" button again and again with a little deformed flipper type thing, right? And then the parents are like, "No, disregard that. This is costing us loads of money. I'm sick of this kid. Can you just get the needles out?" And like, what would you do then?
I would trust the flipper hitting the "Don't kill me" button, I think.
Okay.
Assuming that this thing has like the potential to think and it knows what it's slapping.
Okay. Sorry. All these ridiculous hypotheticals are coming to my head.
Well, real quick,
so...
because with the caveat that you gave that, I wonder, like, because I don't think the parents could make a decision to like abort somebody after they're born. Right. No matter what. So yeah, like we're saying, like, I guess if the kid is like, clicking the flipper or whatever, but say like we don't actually trust that they know what they're clicking and that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. I still don't know that I would think it was okay for parents to like make a decision to abort somebody after they're born.
Okay. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, the workers' rights thing. What do you think about firing people for being racist on Twitter?
I think you should separate work life and whatever. Like if it was a business account, that's a different thing. But I feel like it's weird having people lose their shit over stuff like that.
The other thing I want to throw in there, and this is lending ground to you really, Tom, but I think if someone's wearing their work uniform, even if it's outside of work, I think that's
representing that still. Yeah, for sure.
Even if you're not on the clock, take your shirt off if you want to start a fight or something. Like, I don't know. I'll give you that.
I mean, I'm on salary. My business can call me literally at any time and say like, hey, work on this thing or start on this, or what's your opinion on this, or, whatever. So I don't know, like, for a lot of people, if they're ever actually off the clock.
I mean, I'm a salaried employee as well, but I don't agree with that. If there's no like outward reflection of the business, like there's a lot of gray area within that though. But yeah,
right, okay.
Right on the other end of that.
Like, say I'm Nick Fuentes, and I'm out here like preaching all of this stuff. Should any business just have to put up with that as long as he doesn't say where he works, even if he gets doxxed and everybody knows where he works? He's not representing the company personally, or not choosing to, at least. So now they just have to put up with like everybody knowing that Nick Fuentes works for them.
Yeah, that's the one area sometimes where is there someone, because I'm thinking more so of like, a racist incident or some viral thing that goes off. But if it's someone like Nick Fuentes, I don't know. To be consistent, I probably have to say, yeah, the company's got to put up with it. But I don't know. There's
Yeah,
something doesn't
more
feel quite right
alignment.
about it. So I think there needs to be some sort of criteria in there where I don't know what it is exactly, but I think there's some sort of criteria that like an excessive amount of something maybe could lead to some sort of like ability for the company to do something. But I don't know what that looks like. But yeah, sure.
I like okay, so I got banned because a group of like a left wing content creator and her mods, like she literally sent them to like get me banned, and they just watched like everything that I said everywhere I went and followed me around and just kept reporting things until eventually I got banned. I actually like had to be conscious a lot of like the fact that like I kept like my work separate from these things, and that like my work would never find out about the stuff that I did. But those same people, even after I got banned, sent an email to my bosses with like a freaking highlight reel of like horrible things that I had said, some like way out of context. And
Jesus.
I don't know that I like expect. Thankfully, that my bosses are Trumpers, and I just told them that the cancel culture mob was after me, and I was golden. But
Just tell them, just say the trans council culture brigade, and they probably would be like, yeah, no worries.
yes, yeah, but so yeah, I because it was trans people as well, but yeah, I thankfully was able to wiggle out of that, but I don't know like a lot of the stuff what like I'm talking about like pedophilia in these videos, and I'm talking about rape, and I'm talking about like abortion, and I'm talking about all of these like very controversial, incest and all sorts of stuff. I don't know that I would want to employ that person. Like I don't know that I want them representing me. So I make like a huge effort to not represent my company while also like putting out like what it is that I do for a living, so people understand why I talk about the things that I talk about. But it's a hard line to walk.
I think I like this take. It should be extremely difficult for companies to fire employees for behavior off work time, but not impossible. Yeah, I think that's the take. Because yeah, if it like then you would have a circumstance where it's probably going to be more challenging. If it's just a one-off incident, but if it's like a consistent issue and it's like genuinely causing a detriment to a high level, you could probably make a better case for it. I don't know how it would work legally.
I don't think normally we even need to make that case, because most companies don't want to fire somebody. Like it's expensive to fire somebody, hire somebody new, train them, like go through all of the onboarding. Like this is an expensive process. You don't want to start over with somebody new when you've invested so much in this person. So if it's not actually necessary, normally a company's not going to fire you unless they actually feel like it's necessary. And so I think by itself, it actually evens out to where like most companies aren't gonna just fire you just cause like it actually has to be like big enough and bad enough for it to actually be, a big enough deal.
Okay. Cool. Right, Hydra.
Yeah.
We've got a few people waiting. Was there anything else?
No, that's all I got.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cheers,
guys.
mate. Catch you later.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too.
Hello.
Oh, hey. 1 second, let me mute the stream. Hey, what's up?
What's up, Zap?
Not much. I heard us talking about workers getting fired for out of work stuff, and I had an interesting hypothetical.
Okay.
So if you own a if you own a trying to think of an example. Say you own a small ice cream bar, and you have two people who you employ to help sell ice cream, right? Like you have two workers, and like between the three of you, that's all of the employees of the business. And then like one time when you're out at the pub with one of your employees, he starts going on about like some really racist shit, and it makes you like really, really uncomfortable to be around them. And like, should you be forced to like be around them all the time? Like, can you not fire them because you don't want them to work for you anymore because because they were really racist, but they didn't do that at work.
How would they know? Oh, sorry. Go on, Tom. You go first.
Well, I was going to ask you because you were drawing boundaries around this within the law. So, like with my company, normally this would become an HR issue because it would become a legal issue. And so, if somebody is espousing like racist beliefs and making other employees uncomfortable, normally that would go to HR and they would deal with it and possibly fire the person anyways. So, I'm wondering, like, is HR a part of this hypothetical? Is this allowed in?
Yeah, sure. I guess what I'm saying is if you're in a small business and you have like 2 employees, and you're technically the boss because you own the ice cream shop, and you go out to the pub with one of them and they start talking to you about, the superiority of the white race, and you're like, I kind of don't want to like have to spend half of my life around this guy anymore. Like, shouldn't you, like, I don't know. It feels like you should be able to fire him if you don't, like, I don't know. Does it not seem like you should be able to say, well, I don't think you're a good fit for the workplace anymore, and you just like fire him?
Okay, but then the problem you've got is, what if it wasn't that they were racist and that they were gay? And so when they go back to work, they don't say, I'm firing you because you're gay. They say, like you say, you're not a good fit for the workplace and I want to get rid of you for that reason. Like, that's the problem, is like, I know that obviously it's not the same. Being gay is different to being racist and all that shit.
No, I get you.
I just think if it's like a faulty kind of foundation, because you open up the idea that an employer can hear anything they don't like on like a work night out and get rid of the person for any reason. It could be something you think is absurd. Maybe they like Star Wars over Star Trek. And it's like it could be
at
something
that point,
ridiculous.
right? Like at that point, obviously they've got to go.
What if they're a gay racist? That would be an interesting one.
So okay. So if I've got my 3-person ice cream shop and I decide to fire the person for being a Nazi, do you think that should be illegal, or do you think that that's a morally wrong thing to do? Like, obviously there's a distinction, and I'm more amenable to the legal argument, but I'm wondering if you think it's morally wrong to fire someone for something that they've said while not on the job.
Yes, I think my perception of it will differ dependent on what exactly it is. And obviously I'm going to think a manager is more justified to fire someone for being racist to them outside of work than like if they like Star Wars over Star Trek, because the second one is like totally frivolous and the first one, would make more sense. I just think that it needs to be like that. I'm not completely against the idea of that being a possibility, but I don't think it's something that should be able to happen on a dime. I think there should be like a hearing, like a disciplinary hearing. I think the union obviously would be good to help support like the situation, and there should be like clear-cut rules on that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that the idea that a manager can fire someone just because they said something they don't like outside of work, so it's a very dangerous precedent where people can get fired for literally anything they say, and that puts too much control in the manager's hands, and it means that the worker feels they've got to tread on eggshells for the fear of saying something that displeases their boss, and they can just eat them.
I guess I definitely sympathize with that. Unfortunately, maybe I haven't worked at that many places, but the few places I have worked at, I sort of get the feeling that you like not getting, like if you go on like a 6-month probation period or whatever with the place that you work at, I get the general feeling that it's a 6-month. Do you get along with the people here? And if you don't, will he eat you?
Yeah, and the thing is like I don't have a problem with having a period of time in which the employer has got a little bit more flexibility, because otherwise, the second an employee joins and then it's literally impossible to get rid of them, or very difficult because of all the fucking regulations. Yeah, that creates like a difficult circumstance where someone could genuinely just not be a good fit for the company, and they're forced to kind of remain on the books. I've just had personal experiences where even after like a year of working for a company, they haven't gone for any due process. They've just fucking yeeted me. So, I feel the pain of people who don't have that ability to go through due process for whatever the reason. And I very much believe that in many cases, especially in America, the company's just got way too much power to make, those sorts of decisions. And it needs to be switched a bit more in the other direction. Like I say, not totally. I don't think it should be that, it would take like an act of God to get rid of someone. But it definitely needs to be more balanced, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things you mentioned is if the boss, like, you say something that the boss doesn't like or something. So what about like being disrespectful to the boss? Like, do you think that that's like kind of breaking down an institution of like respect that's necessary within the workplace to where they should still be fired for it?
Me?
Either one of you.
I think it depends. I think if you do it at work in front of customers, it can definitely be an actionable offense. I don't think anyone should be immediately fired for anything. But say if you go on Twitter at the end of the day on a Twitter account that doesn't mention where you work and just say, "Oh, I hate my boss, he sucks." Like, people get fired for that kind of stuff. People get fired for for bosses like looking at their social media, their Facebook and their Twitter, and like finding out that they've badmouthed them. I think that's wrong. I should say. I don't think disrespecting someone outside of work should carry a.
Yeah, I know that for the company that I work for, it's within our rules that like, if you say you send the boss like messed up text messages, or you like they call you and just ask you to come in and you're like, no, F you, like you're a bitch, like, or something like that, this would all be exactly the same as if you were at work. Like, you're you can't like do things to break down this like boss employer relationship, because now you're kind of like messing up the hierarchy that exists that makes the entire company work.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily even the hierarchy, but if you do things deliberately that creates like friction in the workplace, like if I had a coworker like Deborah and I messaged Deborah, like I sent her texts in the morning or before work or after work, and I just said, "I think you're a massive bitch and I think your husband is ugly," then I think that like that's like an actionable. I don't think that, like I say, I don't think anything should go straight to firing, but I think someone needs to talk to you about that, right?
Yeah,
like if you're deliberately creating it doesn't even have to be what I'm saying is it doesn't even have to be a disrupting the hierarchy thing.
Do you know what it means to get papered out?
No.
So
this like constructive dismissal, is that
you're saying that like there should be some sort of process to this. The thing is that like everybody screws up sometimes, right? So everybody shows up to work like 2 minutes late sometimes, or they mess up something a little bit, once in a while. So once you decide, say I decide I want to fire an employee, I just start writing them up for all of those things normally that I wouldn't write them up for.
Right.
Now I'm just writing them up for it. And now I only have to write them up like 3 or 4 times. And now I now have gone through the process of doing what it is that I need to do, so that it's not just a one-time offense thing. Now I can be like, look, I've got all of these write-ups here. They won't stop screwing up. And now it's called papering somebody out.
I've when I was a manager, I've done that.
I've been papered out many times. Yes.
The thing is, like, I know it's like, it sounds mean, but like when you're in that mindset and you've got a team of people, you want to, like, it's difficult because there's someone who is just really shit. But you have to follow a process in order to get rid of them. You can't just go, right, you're no good, see you later. But to me, that's the right way to do it. It's you have a process in place, and as long as you aren't breaking any rules yourself, you're not making things up, and you're genuinely accurately reflecting what they're doing and going through the disciplinary process. I mean, that's what it's there for. It's there to get rid of people who aren't cutting the mustard. And yeah, I don't think, like, I'm a big workers' rights supporter, but I don't think people have got the right to work for a company and just like literally, cost them money. Like, would I don't think anyone would support an employee going to the cash register of the store they work at and taking out $20 bills and burning them. But that's effectively what some employees do, right?
The point is, though, is in this hypothetical or in papering somebody out, we're talking about normally what everybody's doing. Like, you're writing them up for things that literally everybody's doing. You're just only writing them up for it. Everybody's screwing up that amount.
That's bad.
And that's what papering somebody out is like, you're choosing to write them up for the things that, like, technically you could write them up for, but nobody ever does. Nobody ever writes somebody up for something that's small, but you can hypothetically. And so once
Nah,
you
that's
know you want
bullshit.
to fire somebody, now all you do is just start writing them up for showing up 2 minutes late, showing, writing the wrong number on this one sheet of paper, or, like all of these little things that normally everybody does, you choose for this one person. Every time they do it, you're going to write them up so that you have the paper.
Yeah,
That's bad management. That's bad management because you should be consistent, because you've got to assume that, at any point anyone could hit a criteria, and then you need to have the evidence ready. I think you should do it consistently across the board, and then that's fair for everyone.
Sure, but it's hard to actually hold that standard, and that's what I'm saying is when Zap is saying like you should have some sort of process to get to the point where you can fire somebody. I'm trying to explain that like there is a process there. It's just there's not a way to actually like hold people to that standard, and so you're able to use it kind of however you want.
Well, I think in that case the counterbalance would be an employee should have the ability to file for like unfair dismissal if they're treated unfairly, if they're singled out for these sorts of write-ups and no one else gets them. In that situation, I think it's okay to say, well, yeah, I was victimized because I was doing things that everyone else does, but only I was getting written up for them. And then the pushback to the company would be, well, can you demonstrate you follow this process across the board? And the company wouldn't be able to. And then they'd have a strong case for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's difficult with that, though, because definitionally, if people aren't getting written up for it, there isn't so much of a paper trail. So it would be a difficult thing to prove.
Right.
Well, no, it's not at all, because all you would say to the company is, right, you've got all these, you've got 20 write-ups for this person you've documented. Can we see the write-ups for the other employees?
Right.
They didn't do it. They didn't do it.
And then you'd be like, are you seriously saying that none of these people came in 2 minutes late or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, isn't it? The company would argue they didn't do it, but then, you're suggesting that every single other employee is absolutely perfect in all of their conduct, and it's just this one employee that's doing the bad things. I think would probably be quite a strong case. Particularly if the employee's got evidence of other, other employees doing the things they're being accused of. There'd probably be like text messages and stuff like that they could point to.
I would find it hard socially to do that. If I was fired and like written up for a bunch of stuff, I would find it difficult to be like, well, actually, like, and not really knock on my other employees, but be like, oh, well, actually, everyone's doing this. I don't know. That's just
you have the lawyers that deal with like unfair dismissal, and they look into all this stuff and they figure out ways and means to evidence that people are being singled out for treatment and harsher punishments or whatever.
I can't remember what it's called, but here in Georgia we have I forget what it's called, employers' rights or employers something, where pretty much like we're able to do just pretty much whatever we want. Like outside of like some sort of federal regulation, like there's pretty much nothing outside of that. Like we could work a 15-year-old 70 hours here if we wanted to. There's nothing against it.
That's crazy.
That is crazy, yeah. I mean,
I have a my boyfriend is from Georgia, and he doesn't get unemployment benefits because he started working somewhere and then wasn't a good fit for it and then stopped working it. So even though he worked for like years at a previous place, his last job lasted like only a few weeks, and so now he's not eligible for unemployment. It's really funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's sad, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It really sucks. Yeah. It's just workers' rights in America absolutely suck in some ways. That's just an anecdote, though.
Yeah. And I think like Texas is even worse than Georgia. Like Texas is almost like a straight up like libertarian state. Oh my goodness.
Okay,
the best adult dating site is in your chat right now.
Okay. I'll sort that out.
Best.
Right. It's already gone. Okay, don't listen. Right. There's a couple more people waiting. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No. Thank you for the discussion. It's been wonderful.
Right.
Thank
Catch you later.
See ya.
FK Debo. Hello. Thank you for waiting.
Hello? Can y'all hear me good?
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
All right, cool. So, excuse me, you might hear me take a few deep breaths. Unlike the people we might be talking about tonight, I am a virgin at this. This is my first conversation with my favorite internet debater, ChudLogic.
Excellent. Hello.
So I have probably two contentions here. So I heard something ChudLogic say earlier. I didn't really find it too comfortable. So I noticed you said that like you weren't cool with using like abortion as a form of birth control. Yes, I gotta know why not. You know, what's the big deal with that? You know, I know it's kind of like implicit on the conservative side, but I heard you say something about that earlier.
Wait, hang on. I'm not a conservative, first of all. I don't know if you got the wrong impression about me.
No.
I don't think that people are using abortion as a contraceptive.
No, right. But I'm saying that like you seem to have issue with that thought of using birth control as a contraceptive, and I'm wondering why. I don't.
Because I think that the position I've kind of arrived at is that I don't think that a fetus is worthy of zero moral consideration. I don't think it's worthy of the same moral consideration as a baby or like a third trimester fetus, say. But I think it's worthy of some moral consideration. And it just seems like unnecessarily cruel and pointless to just have like unlimited abortions. I think that if someone's getting like a significant amount of abortions, it's maybe time to say, well, why does this keep happening? Also, it's not very good for, I can't imagine that having like lots of abortions would be good for like a woman's mental state. I think that would probably fuck with their head eventually. Yeah, I don't know. I just think contraception would be an easier solution at that stage if someone was, say, getting 100 abortions a year, as unlikely as it is. But yeah.
Well, like let's put it in like more realistic terms. Let's say, you know, a woman, she's you know, in the like 20 to 25 range. She's going out, and maybe she gets like an abortion, maybe twice a year. Are you saying that would be like you would impugn that woman for that?
Probably not. No, twice a year. I don't know if I'm talking about someone who's doing it like
yeah,
to
like you know
excess.
the summer time. You know, you go out, you have some fun. Maybe like once at the beginning of the summer, maybe once towards like the end of summer.
Every
That's
year?
a bad thing, or well, like, yeah, for a couple of years. You know, you're in college. You know, wilding out.
I mean, the thing is, my thought process is, because this is all about a hypothetical of someone being able to get like 100 abortions a year. I don't know if there's a realistic situation where I would say, oh no, that's wrong. Because to me, if someone's getting 2 abortions a year with the moral weight I would give a fetus of say 8 to 12 weeks, I just personally wouldn't like take a big issue with that. I'm talking of someone getting, you know, an impossible amount of abortions, you know, but really all it highlights to me is that there's at least somewhat of a moral consideration we should give, even if it's not the same moral consideration of a third trimester fetus or a baby. It needs to probably be more than enabling people through a hypothetical situation to get an unlimited amount of abortions in a year. Do you see what I mean?
Well, maybe I could ask either you or Tom to provide a little bit of that moral consideration for me. So I'll lay out a little bit. So like, you know, I'm a young 20-something Zoomer personally. I'm not a religious person. I think that stem cell research is pretty sick. You know, I like the thoughts of that. What moral consideration should I give to any fetus? Why?
I mean, my thoughts on this are not very well developed. I don't know if Tom's got any takes on this that, you know.
I mean, like legally, I think that our government should act in a more of a consequential manner with laws and things like that. I still think that like abortions overall should be like considered morally wrong and somewhat like what I can't think of the right word, stigmatized in a way, but I don't think that like they should be completely illegal. So I would say that like legally they should have like some sort of protections after some after some sort of trimester, right? But if like parents die and you have a fetus inside of you, I doubt that fetus is going to like gain the land and, you know, the house and, you know, everything in your name. So they don't get those sort of rights. They don't get that sort of personhood. The like even children are treated differently than like full-grown adults. Like they don't have the same amount of rights, and they're kind of treated like property. And so even more so the same with a fetus. Like they don't get to choose what they eat or when they eat. They don't get to choose. But like as far as them having a life, I would say that like they have a right to, at least morally, they should be treated as though they have a right to life.
Okay, I guess. But it's just
so-
because in facto that it's just because it's going to become a life. That's just, you like that thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the question I would ask for you then is, and this is obviously not possible, but it's obviously to try and figure out where you are with it. If there was a way that you could have an abortion in like, you know, a click of a fingers, there was electric shock that got rid of the fetus, and it enabled a woman to have sex and get pregnant and get an abortion, you know, say 100 times in a year. If a woman was, say, at a 50th one of those, would you not feel that it would be necessary to step in and say, hey, maybe you should stop doing this abortion constantly. Why don't you try contraception instead? Would you not? Would you take issue with that or not?
I don't think I would for any moral reasons. Maybe I just because it might be easier, like, to not have to take that step of the abortion. It's like, hey, you know, you could do other things too. But I don't think I would have any moral issues with that, no. I like the thought of, you know, any young mother not being a young mother if she doesn't have to be.
Sure, but I mean, I guess the thing is, the point of the hypothetical is to try and put it in a position where having an abortion is, you know, as easy as using contraception.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if it's literally as easy, no, I don't. I think you can do it a million times. What's the difference? Because then, what is the difference between wearing 100 different condoms or having 100 different abortions? I just don't see any.
Well, because the idea would be that you are even though maybe we don't consider it life or we don't consider it conscious or whatever, you're creating something that, like, you know, a mother that has a miscarriage would mourn over, even though that person doesn't see it as. And I believe obviously there's a contextual way we look at it to decide whether it's what more consideration we give it. But surely there's like at least some little scrap of moral consideration that would be given where we'd want to stop that from happening.
Maybe, but I think that's all in relative to just if you want the child or not. Like, if you don't, then I don't see how you could think of it as any different than swapping on a condom.
Well, it would, because he's saying like you've created a different being at that point, whereas like a condom doesn't have an actual being there. It has like parts that have
Right.
not been connected yet, but once it's actually like inside of a womb growing, like now you have like a separate being. And he's saying that once there's a separate being, now you would have a different set of rules for
Different
it.
level of moral culpability to it,
Mhm.
maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't. I don't see it because I don't see. I think it's maybe because I consider life to be the hard cutoff at birth, so everything before that isn't life, and that might cloud my judgment
Wait,
here.
so would you, if a woman went in at 8 months and said,
Listen, I take the Fabian Liberty argument here. All right, I think
Oh,
he is insane, but I like the option of just the evictionist to a certain degree. Like, cause I don't know. I feel like there are other things you could do with that body if it does die, and if not, you know, you could preserve it if it's at that 8-month point. I think he's insane, but I like the evictionist stance on abortion.
But is there
okay, so you wouldn't,
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, you wouldn't support abortion at 8 months. You would support inducing labor to get the baby out.
Or like, yeah,
Not
like
to
a
abort.
C-section. Yeah, because
Okay.
yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
So is there like a separate, like, is there a line that you draw that makes this a separate thing? Because I don't think like at 8 months, it's a different thing that it is once it's born. Like it's still, there's not like a line I can draw between those two things that would actually make it a different thing. So is there a line at some point that you draw that says this is where it's something different that has different rules for it?
So I think once it is able to survive on its own, it should be able to give in that chance, right? But it sucks because it's dependent on, you know, medical advancements and where you are in the world. But generally, I think that at all points in the pregnancy, if you want to get an abortion, you should just remove the object from you. You know, I think that he's kind of onto something where you shouldn't chop it up. I don't think I like his argument because he morally loads his opinion on it, but I think you should just take it out. Because we are, in the 21st century, we have these advancements that we can't do this, and it's relatively harmless to the mother. So why not just do that in all these cases? I think that would also kind of give it a little bit more seriousness to getting an abortion. It's a lot less of it's a more invasive procedure at that point, kind of making it a more serious decision to actually go get that abortion, regardless of the state that you're getting it at.
Okay, so it's kind of like just like a kid could be 8 years old when you decide to put him up for adoption. Like it's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay. I think there's someone else waiting. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about whilst you're here?
It would be kind of off topic. It'd be a little bit of curveball, so we could pull more people in if you'd rather.
Oh no, give me the curveball. What is it?
Listen, I just don't appreciate how little love you have for the YouTube community, Chud. All right, do you even read your comments on YouTube? All right, you
No,
leave
I
it all
don't
at the
anymore.
DK. You just leave it all at the DK. No love for the YouTube, man.
I did. Okay, let me explain. The reason I don't read YouTube comments anymore is because I just get angry when I do, because it's a fucking absolute idiot
Listen,
posting
make
some
it a
bullshit comment.
make it a 20-minute segment at the end of your day. You're like, all right, well, listen, we uploaded a banger this morning. Let's go take 20 minutes, read some of these dog shit takes, and talk about them for a minute. All right, but you have no consideration for the fans, man.
No, listen, you're actually right, because I could. My issue is I read a comment and I'm just there annoyed, and I can't do anything with that anger. But if I read it on stream, I can shout at them,
Yes.
and feel better about it. That's a
Pull
great
them on
idea.
even.
Thank
They
you.
might even be there. You could even pull
Yeah.
them on.
Okay, thank you. That's actually really good feedback. I'm going to do that from now on.
I love you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I love you too. Have a good one, okay?
Yeah,
Hey,
y'all too.
shout out to DK. He puts hearts on all my comments all the time in your YouTube videos. So well done.
DK's a chat.
Okay, cheers. Thanks for the tip as well. It's going to be good content. Appreciate you. Goodbye. Captain Gwendolyn, hello.
Hello, hello. Let me pause this. There we go. And then let me just get on cam. I am. Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
excellent. Waking up, get my day started right with a fucking debate. Let's go.
Okay, so what you said, I think, was that you feel that there's an issue with giving too much leeway to conservatives on this. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
My
talk
concern is
to
that
us.
so for the past like 40 or 50 years, abortion in the United States has rested on the right to privacy, which I think we can all agree here that's probably not sufficient to morally justify abortion. It kind of to me it requires the consciousness argument, and I think we need to be adamant about that. We need to be adamant you are not killing something, right? My right to kill somebody doesn't switch on when the curtains close in a doctor's office, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so basically we need to it's going to be a painful process. We need to get people to understand that their emotional attachment to a fetus isn't entirely logical, and for that we just need to start educating people on concepts of life, when a life begins, and when a fetus, essentially becomes a baby, has all of the working components. The fully formed neurons, the frontal cortex, all that stuff. Around 24 to 28 weeks. We just need to go through the hard process of educating people and not pussyfooting around their feelings on it.
Okay.
Too much. Now, if you go too hard in my direction, they're not going to listen to you. So you don't want to be too giga chat about it. But we do need to be like clear, and we can't lie to them and be like, yeah, the fetus kind of matters because it matters. Well, no, we can feel it matters, and we can talk about our feelings on that. But at the end of the day, the ultimate moral consideration, until that thing is a conscious living being, is the mother. And we're going right back to being dismissive of the mother when we pussyfoot too much on this.
So the reason that like the Roe versus Wade ruling with privacy was somewhat of an issue, is that they were stretching really far to get privacy to mean that you can now have an abortion. I don't know where you would find consciousness within the Constitution to where that could actually apply. I think the best way to do it is through equality.
Well, I'm not a strict constitutionalist, so I'm not going to say like, well,
But
the
you're-
Constitution doesn't mention conscious. Hold on, I'm not going to say the Constitution doesn't mention consciousness, so we can never go about it this way. I would encourage, put people throughout the United States to agree on this, and for amendments to be passed to guarantee the right of an abortion, based on these, sort of moral considerations.
But those amendments are based on like what the Constitution already says, right? So we don't just make new stuff. We actually take interpretations of what we already have.
We
and
can add
new things.
That's wrong. We can add to the Constitution. That's what amendments are for.
We can, but yes, they are interpretations from what's already there. That is how like the process works. So there's like different processes like strict scrutiny or crap, I forget the other one, but there are processes to go through from how you logically go from what is currently in the Constitution to what like you're trying to rule on in the moment. You're able to interpret and like stretch a little bit more. So like originally they didn't say anything about privacy, but we could see that a lot of things kind of included
I'm not
privacy,
making the privacy
right?
argument. I'm not making the privacy
I understand,
argument.
but I'm saying that that's how we got to privacy.
Is insufficient. I'm saying that argument is insufficient.
I understand. I'm saying that that's how we got to the privacy ruling, though, and we can't get to a consciousness ruling without something to build on.
Well, I'm not a legal scholar, so are you just going to tell me like, well, until we burn the Constitution and create a new one, that we can't legally have abortion?
No, I think that we could actually do it through equality. I think that like men aren't required to hold a fetus within their bodies at any point, and so I think like we have a issue with equality
transphobe.
when we do somewhat expect this from females.
What about trans men? Come on, man, you're being super transphobic right now.
Come on, dude.
I
No, listen.
Sometimes the bros just want to carry a baby.
I corrected it and said female.
Just ignoring them.
My bad.
Okay, wait, no, listen. What about have you seen the film Junior? That could happen.
With Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes, that's right. Okay, I've actually got another angle for this.
Yeah.
And it's that I feel like this is one of those, well, we're definitely correct, so just agree with us takes.
No, of course not. It's not easy. Like it's easy.
But you
for me to
literally
come on here.
you're literally saying we need to educate people. It sounds like fucking education camp shit.
Wait, that's a huge leap from what I just said.
Okay, what if someone says
we have
to
to
you,
include these in our existing education programs, high school, college, and all that.
But the thing is,
I'm not saying like take the Republicans and like throw them in education camps.
But the problem is, the question of when life begins is a very difficult philosophical argument that I don't think there's any firm answers for.
I don't think it's difficult at all.
Well, of course it is. This is a question that has escaped philosophers for literal fucking generations. You acting like it's just, oh well, life begins here when I say it does, essentially, or when
No, not when I say it does. That's not when life begins.
Well, when is it you think?
Okay,
right, go on.
So life, in the strictest technical part of the term, is a couple of factors, right? Basically like anything from the trees to the grass to me is life. But when it comes to moral consideration, I can cut down trees. I should only kill my dog under certain circumstances where like it can't survive very well, and I should make damn sure I'm not killing another human being unless my life is in danger, right? Like I'm being very general. We're hitting on a bunch of topics here, but we're talking about conscious experience and moral consideration. So people have to understand when something is a fetus, when it's not conscious, when it's akin to a body that functions, it's hooked up to life support and doesn't have doesn't think, doesn't feel. It might twitch, it might, curl its fingers or wince its face, but it does not experience any of that. It doesn't experience anything. And so we don't have to worry about it that much. And then eventually, because of human development, it transitions to something that we should consider. And I think that if we can begin to educate people, and this is going to be a long process, it's not going to help Republicans of today, of course.
But okay, the
but it
problem I've
would
got
help
though is
people
I
tomorrow.
don't think that science deals with the question of when life begins. I think it deals with when is something conscious, when does it have this happen, this happen, this happen. The question of when life begins is a philosophical question, and people have got different views on that based on what their grounding principles are. Some people will agree with you that it's from consciousness. Other people say that it's from conception. You know, and like I don't agree with people that say it's from conception necessarily, but you know, that then becomes a philosophical issue, because whether or not consciousness is a determinant of life is a philosophical concern, not a scientific concern.
Well, I live in Mississippi. When I talk to people who say it's from conception, it's usually not like a deep philosophical question. It's usually they just kind of think it's alive, and it's it's like a little baby person, and it goes to a slightly bigger baby, well, significantly bigger baby person, and it's always feeling, it's always connected to the mom in some like spiritual, emotional way, and that's just kind of how they feel. And they've been brought up that way. I don't know.
I mean,
Whatever
it's
philosophical priors led to that point where they are under that impression, I don't know.
it seems like an
But
issue of
it
consistency.
hasn't been particularly complicated as far as my
But this
experience
is my
goes.
problem. But this is my problem. If they truly believe that, then they truly believe that. And I don't know if there's any science you could point them to that would contradict that. There's science which talks about when certain things begin, and you would say, well, that's when life begins, or, you know, you'd have a different philosophical principle that would then lead you to that position. But I don't think you can science someone out of that position, because there's a philosophical disagreement. There's a fundamental disagreement between some central principle.
Just
Well,
real quick,
that kind of comes.
he's saying that we should have like a social standard that would eventually roll over to where like everybody kind of believes in this thing. It's just kind of like socially ingrained in everyone, and then that would be the standard. And so as long as everybody right now
just don't think
starts
that's
pushing
possible.
for that, then eventually
Right, yeah.
I mean, like we thought for a long time that everybody was 50-50 on abortion, and then just now we did new polling to where it's actually like 70-30. And so having abortion legal has really changed the way that society looks at it and whether or not they think it should be legal. So I'm sure it going back the other way will change everybody's opinions to go right back to 50-50 again. So I think that it will definitely make a huge difference in society and how we deal with these sorts of questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard process. Like, look at the process it took to end slavery here in the United States. It sadly did not work out as far as civil conversations go, right? But we got through the bloody business of it, and now we don't have slavery, and that's good. And surely to God, it won't take a civil war as far as abortion is concerned, but it'll be a difficult, shitty process. But we gotta find a way to the other side.
Yeah, I feel like this is like the kind of, it feels like, because this is what I talk about, people aren't considerate of like that disagreement, and it feels like you just want to railroad over that, you know, to get people to agree with what your kind of moral position on it is. And
well,
that's politics.
Yes, you are kind of. Yeah, I was actually going to get to that too, actually, because there's a political power standard on this too. But you are correct. When I am talking to people around here, I can feel the amount of like emotional weight that they give to a fetus, and so my rhetoric becomes a lot more tempered at that point, right? I'm trying really hard not to prod that too hard.
Cool.
So you can't be like how I am right now in this moment talking to ChudLogic. And sorry, what's your
Tom.
user?
Tom.
Okay, terminal my menu. Got Tom. Good. Yeah, you can't be like how I am right now. You got to be a little bit less. But I think you should be still stalwart and like don't lie to them. Don't be like, yeah, I mean, a fetus at 10 weeks, it's something. It's important. It's great. Like, you got to be like, listen, I understand that you feel that way. Like, I get you. But
okay,
think like if you want to give moral consideration to something, give it to the thing that is conscious. Because quite frankly, the same people who are stressing about the fetus are the same people who are like, hey, if I'm brain dead and I'm just hooked up to some fucking tubes, fucking end it. Pull that plug.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Would you ever give moral consideration to a fetus that's 10 weeks old?
No.
Okay. Would you... So if someone came up to you and said, oh, my fetus was 10 weeks old and I've just had a miscarriage, how would you react to that? Would you give it any
Kinda
more
depends on how-
consideration then?
We're assuming that they're like distraught, right?
Yeah, they're upset about it.
I feel bad for them. I think one thing
Why?
is
But
kind of
why? You
That would mess up your social
you,
standard.
they were hoping. So I understand that they're kind of under a sort of misconception. Like under my framework, you can still.
So
be
you think they're just
Hold-
you think they're irrational, basically?
kind of, but I have to explain why.
Okay, go on.
The reason, the reason they're irrational right now is because like they think that a living conscious thing has been lost, and that's not the case. But where they're not irrational is, I think even if it's not a living conscious being, you can still feel loss because you were hoping for what that could grow into. You had some hope. You wanted it to be a baby. I think you can still be just as morally considerate of that, and for the heartbreak that the mother goes through. Absolutely. And I'm not saying like when you talk to her, be like don't say anything about what I just said. But yeah, you can still feel empathy for that person.
I feel like that
Absolutely.
would push back against your social standard, though. If you want people to stop looking at this thing as though it's something to feel bad about, you can't also feel bad for them and say, like, oh, this is so sad. You'd have to be like, why are you sad? That's nothing. It's a blob of cells. It doesn't mean anything. Because as soon as you
No.
give this some sort of consideration to where it actually makes sense to feel anything for it, now you're backtracking on that social standard that you're trying to set.
I disagree. I'm not backtracking at all. You can hope for something. Like people get disappointed about things that are not yet of being all the time, right? People get hopeful for whether they get into a college or not, or things like that. People get hopeful for, like, again, in this situation, the life that could have been, or the conscious, beautiful life that could have been. Now I do suspect that under my framework, you might actually be a little bit less. Because in my framework, some people are going to be like, well, this one didn't work out, but like the next one will. But I still would expect even them to experience some disappointment. But I don't think there's like some intrinsic like emotional like thing going on there. I think like that would be person to person based on where their kind of thinking and headspace is.
So do you think your consciousness is attached to like your body or your DNA or anything like that? Like if your parents had aborted
My
you
DNA?
as a
No.
fetus, would you not be gone? Would you end up in another set of cells later? Like who are you and what is it that you're...
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm asking like, okay, so like as a person, we're looking at you. You have your own personality, you have your own thoughts, you have your own look. You're your own person, right? And this is like mostly we would base this on like your own consciousness and the way that you experience the world, right? And this all starts with like your DNA and your cells and them like all building the way that they do and then turning this into experiences later on. Would you as a person not be gone if your parents had aborted your fetus or the fetus that became you?
I would be. You kind of said something about like some connection between like who I am and DNA, and that's I am definitely, my DNA has an impact on who I am. I am not DNA. But more to your point, yeah, no, I wouldn't exist, of course, if my parents had aborted me. But also wouldn't give a shit because I would have never existed had they aborted me.
Sure, but like
Right.
your chance at life is gone now, right? You as a person would have been mourned. When your parents are like upset that you were miscarried or whatever, they're mourning you, this person that's sitting in front of us. It just would have been, you wouldn't have developed yet, right?
No, they're mourning whatever their idea of what I would have became is. They're mourning the idea, not me, because I never existed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds
I
like
had
you're
some
saying
questions.
you existed, though. It sounds like you're saying, like, yes, I'm
No.
attached to that fetus, but it's not. But now you're saying it's not you, but
I'm
it is
saying-
you
no,
at the same time.
I'm just saying, people. It's on different degrees, obviously, but people have, they're disappointed when their Amazon package gets lost in the mail. They're super disappointed when the fetus miscarries. It's not, but it has no, it's those feelings, shouldn't impact my right to an abortion.
Okay.
I got some questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
You said earlier, Tom, there should be consequences for people who put themselves in bad situations all by themselves. And this was like in reference to abortion.
Mhm.
What did you mean by that? Like what consequences, and like what did you mean in general?
I'm talking about like when I say that, like, I think morally we should still stigmatize abortion. I think that like people who have sex and put themselves into a position where they're going to get pregnant, it makes sense that we would hold them accountable personally as the person who ended up having an abortion. Not that it just
What would that
it didn't
accountability
just
look like?
happen to them. Social
What would that
stigma.
like social stigmatization? Like you go into the abortion clinic and we give you the old side eye, call you a bitch.
Well, I mean,
Something like that.
like currently people aren't walking around like, hell yeah, dude, just got back from the abortion clinic. It was awesome, right? Like normally people don't talk about it very much because it
Nice.
is
Keep it
somewhat, it is somewhat socially stigmatized. And so I'm saying like, we kind of build this up as though you have no responsibility in this whatsoever, and if you get pregnant it's a horrible thing and you just go get it aborted and deal with it, and like there's no personal responsibility in that whatsoever. And but the same people will still say that, oh yeah, it does seem as though there's like a moral issue there with aborting a fetus. So I have an issue with those two takes at the same time. And I think like, yes, if there's a moral issue there, we should also have like some sort of personal responsibility on that human as an individual.
I don't agree with this at all. I don't know why we would do that. You're not doing anything wrong at all when you go get an abortion, as long
Well,
as it's not conscious.
Obviously, I
So I don't know why
disagree with that.
I don't know why we would stigmatize it.
Obviously,
get
I
into that.
disagree with that. Yeah, like
Oh, but there is a kind of so studies have shown, this is from Action Canada SHR.org, okay?
Mhm.
Studies have shown that between half and 2/3 of people who have an abortion were using contraception at the time that they became pregnant. So half to 2/3 of people, at least by my standard. Now, I'm curious what you would consider responsible. They are being responsible. They're doing everything that they functionally can
Mhm.
to not get pregnant outside of just not having sex. So would we say that people who have sex with contraception or condoms or whatever are irresponsible and they just shouldn't be having sex, or what would we like?
I wouldn't say
Like
any of those things, but I would say yes, if
Okay.
you are having sex, you understand that there is a chance that you are going to get pregnant. So, yeah. As long as you understand that that's a consequence likely of you having sex, then I don't think it's ridiculous to think that you understand that this is a consequence, like, and that you would that we would attach that to you personally.
Okay, I guess I'm still kind of on this why we would stigmatize these people then.
So
Wait,
like I said, I do think that there is some sort of moral issue there, and especially if we're wanting to be consistent where we draw lines, it seems as though viability is fairly arbitrary. Like babies can't take care of themselves in general, so it doesn't make much sense to draw viability. So I do understand like somebody saying like, okay, the person is born now, so this is where I would draw the line, versus it's like all the way to like conception, like, okay, like just being consistent. It seems like one of those two lines is where you would have to draw it, and anywhere in between is just insanely arbitrary.
so between conception and 24 weeks, why should I stigmatize somebody for an abortion between those 2 points?
Between
Conception and 24 weeks. So it's considered that the functional parts of a fetus, like it's developed to the point where it can have some conscious experience roughly at between 24 and 28 weeks. So if we put the line at 24 weeks, falling back to conception, why should I side eye and call somebody a bitch for getting an abortion?
I mean, again, I think you as a person are still attached to that being. Whatever that fetus is, you as a person and the like consciousness that will grow from this is still attached to that thing, whatever it is. And I think to just erase all of that and pretend that it's not is kind of ridiculous. Like that's what we're thinking of, is the being and the person that that comes from this fetus. So it just seems a little ridiculous to pretend that that's not the case.
Well, then it sounds like we need to change how we conceive of it from what you're talking about, which seems kind of close to how a lot of people conceive of it, albeit put more eloquently than they would probably put it. and where I'm at. I don't think anything of what you just said justifies stigmatization of people.
I would love to hear an argument for that.
Sure. So you're saying that we're attached to it, and because we're attached to it, whatever it may be or whatever we can consider it, that basically we should still be considerate of it morally. It just sounds like we should consider it morally because we should consider it morally. I don't think that holds water.
So
I think my argument that I already stated holds more water.
So I like morality seems to be something that we've created so that we can all interact with one another in like the most cohesive manner possible. And so we give each other like some sort of moral not culpability. Well, culpability as well, but we give each other some sort of like moral crap. We grant each other our own morality. I can't think of the word. I'm sorry.
I would just say consideration.
Moral consideration. Right? Yes, we give each other moral consideration, and
I don't shoot you so that you don't shoot me. Yeah.
Right, and I think that like again, like these things should be consistent to some point, and I think that that is a consistency within it. So morally, I would say that this is an issue.
I would say mine's more consistent. It's not a conscious life. It doesn't have any consideration really when we get down to it. The mother is the ultimate like person to be considerate of here because it's the only person right now, between conception and 24. I think to be considerate of that woman means not being shitty to her when she goes to get an abortion, not stigmatizing her.
So when you say yours is more consistent,
it's already a hard thing to do, right? Like why would we stigmatize it?
Well,
it's hard on the body. It's there's some depending on the person's headspace, there's some emotions involved. Like I think there's more social cohesion by being considerate and not stigmatizing the mother. Well, sorry, not the mother, but the person carrying the fetus.
So you said that you think yours is more consistent to go based on consciousness, and I'm not. I want to be clear. I'm not making the argument that
more consistent and more considerate.
Yeah, that we can't like draw a line somewhere to where we think consciousness begins, but it can't be more consistent when we have absolutely no idea where consciousness begins. And so like
we do though.
But we do know when like an actual being is there and when it's being grown and when it will start to develop.
We know it. So like for example, like I can't remember the exact week, but like we do start to develop the neurons that you need early or fairly early on. But they're hollowed out, like they're not like full and complete, enough for like signals to be passed through. There's certain parts of the brain that just aren't developed, and you need those parts of the brain to be consciousness. If I take a human being and I put a bullet in their head, there's a reason why, even though they have a functioning heart, they still die. And that's because I've completely obliterated those necessary components, not just for maintaining the blood pumping and all the various systems that we function on, right? What you need to be a human vegetable in a bed, but also the things that you need to like walk, move, feel, experience, love, hate, all that stuff.
Well, that's why I made the caveat to say I'm not saying consciousness doesn't exist. I'm saying that we can't draw a hard line to say that this is where it starts, that we don't know, we can't know exactly when consciousness starts. I
think science has drawn a pretty good line. I think
it hasn't.
24,
from what I've seen, it hasn't drawn a line whatsoever on consciousness. Like it's consciousness is even hard to define exactly what it is. So how could we draw a line as to when it starts? Like I agree that we can say so like again, I want to be very clear. I am not saying that like we can't draw any sort of line because we don't know exactly where it begins, right? We can say like okay, maybe around like
but 28. Well, that's the thing. 24 is far enough back that it is amply considerate
right
of that. that you're not accidentally
Yes. And I'm saying I agree with that.
killing something.
Yes, I'm saying I agree with that there is probably consciousness there at some point and that we can draw a line. What I'm saying is that when you say, I think mine is more consistent, but I'm basing it off of consciousness, I'm saying you can't be more consistent basing it on a line that you can't even draw. Whereas there's a pretty hard line drawn here as to when a being is starting to form.
Okay. So well, let me be more clear then. Actually, the problem. So that is a bit on me. There is a lot of debate on how many components are needed to be considered conscious, because you could push it up to 2 years old, right? But we don't want to be able to shoot babies at 2 years old or something like that. I forget what the number was, like 2 or 3 or something. Whereas some people would consider something conscious. I think 24 weeks is far enough back to be conscious or to be cautious of these considerations that you're talking about. And I think that legally it'd be good for us to, 24, and behind that, be able to have abortions and not be too stressed about it.
Yeah, and so that's what I was saying earlier.
You're correct. You are correct. You are correct. There are still some debates on like the nature of consciousness, but I guess I don't personally want to be too hamstrung about those questions, especially when we're already so far away from where like many would consider true consciousness to be.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I was saying before, is that like when we're talking about somebody who draws a line at conception, I think that like a lot of the time the reason is just for the sake of consistency. They believe that this is like the easiest line to draw. I'm not saying, but I want to still recognize, again, you can draw a line at consciousness and it's perfectly fine, and I don't have any issue with that. I just want to like separate that from whether or not it is more consistent and whether or not it's like a better consequential outcome.
Yeah, the consistency, I don't know if it's technically more consistent. I think we definitely derive more social utility from it. But I'll agree. Right. I don't really. Yeah.
And I would agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. I think. Yeah. I think that's it. I think we got everything.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always lovely. Take care, Chud.
Catch you there. Bye
bye. Bye bye.
Right. There's one more person that's going to come on in a sec. So
okay.
We'll just chill until that happens.
The crap, there was something I wanted to ask you about and I forgot now.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you heard earlier, I think I'm going to come to San Diego for TwitchCon. I don't know if you're going to be there.
If I went, I would get so many people in trouble for being on their Twitch streams. Like that would be a horrible. I've actually thought, wouldn't that be a great troll to just show up to a TwitchCon where everybody's streaming and get them all in trouble for being banned on their streams? Even Twitch would stream TwitchCon and they'd get banned too. It would be great.
Well, I think that, I mean, Destiny's going to be there.
Is he?
And I'm assuming people are, I'm assuming people are not going to like make a big effort to not have Destiny on.
Okay. Yeah, I might go then. We'll see. For anybody in the audience, can I chill real quick?
Yeah, please do.
I'm doing a series of documentaries on YouTube. I've already started on the first one, which is on Destiny. We just put out a trailer recently, but it's not public. You can't find us very easily. We don't want to screw up our chances in the algorithm. So you can go find us at Terminally Online Media on YouTube. We're going to be putting out a bunch of different documentaries on online figures and their communities and kind of the way that they interact and how different this is from the real world and kind of like the lingo and like all of the differences between one community and another. So yeah. There's the first one's going to be on Destiny. I believe the second one is on Vosh, where I ended up putting way too much work on my plate that I didn't realize it was going to take this long. So, but yes, I am making documentaries now, and I think that they're going to be really good, and I think people are going to enjoy them. So, yeah, go subscribe to that channel, Terminally Online Media. It spells Tom, T-O-M, Terminally Online Media. So, yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I'll put the link in chat.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I
So
got
hopefully people go and
video of you reacting on my channel. I was going to put
I saw that.
a relevant reacted, like a ton of different people watched it, and I was gonna put it together in like you know, like a video of everybody reacting to it, and decided that's too much work. just steal your
No
content
worries.
and put it on.
I mean, well, I mean, I don't. That's fine. I don't mind. You know, a cutting room floor clip going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think if I had a British accent, you think I'd be bigger than you?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I wonder how much of my success is just because I'm British, but then I constantly get the anti-British discrimination.
Bro,
So
KF Logan is literally an accent in quotes. Like, there's nothing else there except for the accent.
oh my god, damn! You're not a fan of Kevin Logan, no?
He's a special one.
Okay, there is someone else that wanted to speak, but there's someone else here. Let's bring them in and see what they got to say.
All right.
This isn't that. Hello.
We can't hear you. This isn't that if you're speaking. We still can't hear you.
Well, I'm just kind of waiting. Okay, I'm waiting for Dr. Butler to turn up to speak. No worries, Captain Gwendolyn. Thanks for the $2. It was good to have you on. Okay, have you got any new, fresh perspectives, Tom?
Well, what I do for my job is like within a linguistic perspective, mostly like rhetoric. And one of the things that I've been studying for the last like 3 years, very hardcore, is the idea of gender and the concept that surrounds it and the way that we use these words. So I put out a video called The Gender Manifesto, where I'm making descriptive claims on how we use these words and what it is we're communicating when we use ideas like this. And it, like, I'm supposed to have a conversation with Thomas Bogardus about this in a month or so, but it seems to be like fairly controversial, where like I keep having a lot of conversations or debates with other people, but all they want to do is have this very like prescriptive conversation of what they think gender should be. And it's an issue that I run into, like, again, linguistically, like I would just rather like explain what a word means or what like we're communicating in these cases. And I'm having a lot of trouble getting people to separate their prescriptions from the descriptive. And it's literally like I find it almost impossible now. Like everybody within this space, I can do it outside of this space, no problem. But everybody in this space wants to add these prescriptions onto the word of what gender should be. Do you ever have like these conversations or this issue at all?
I don't have conversations about gender because it's really fucking boring.
I find it
So
fascinating.
I don't. Well, yeah, but you're a nerd with all this shit, aren't you? So you would.
With language, I am.
No.
In general, I'm not a nerd at all. Like, I don't play video games or read comics or watch like superhero stuff at all. But
Do
in
you
this
think there should
case-
be concentration camps for gamers?
concentration games for gamers?
No. Wait. I'll answer more seriously with your question. So, I think that, I don't. The problem I have talking about gender is I've got a very base level take, really, right? I will, on a personal level, you know, I don't really give a shit. I think I don't care about like self ID and stuff on a social level. I think if someone tells me they're this, I'll call them that. You know, I don't really care that much about it to that level. What I kind of get frustrated with is I just feel there's a lot of stupid takes that exist on like both sides of the discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you've got like my favorite conservative take is, you know, trans people aren't very well and all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is not be in any way respectful to their identity and just shit on them. And like that's their idea of how they're going to help people, and I'm just like, that's insane. So you're recognizing it, you yourself are saying you believe they've got some sort of issue, and you think that just shitting on them is going to help them get better. Like that's mental. But then I feel like people we've got a lot of ground when it comes to the trans conversation to a degree, especially at like a social level, I think. But then people, it's almost like, you know, 1 inch take a mile, and people want to have the same level of reverence and respect paid to whatever fucking gender shit they cook up, like yesterday on Tumblr. And I just think like, you know, like can we have a bit of time to like move forward a bit before we start going on about, you know, cuttlefish gender, whatever the fucking shit you're talking about. Like I personally don't really mind. I'm like, whatever, if you want to be a cuttlefish, I'll call you a cuttlefish. But like not everyone's got that same proclivity, and having like skepticism about that isn't transphobia. I don't think it's a different thing that's happening there.
Yeah, the main like idea behind the video Gender Manifesto is that we can't abolish gender. Like it's not even a possibility. That's not a thing that you can do. Like it's a pattern that we've recognized over time that exists, and especially we like pretty objectively know that it's separate from sex, but we still recognize these patterns. And so then I go over like study after study after study after study showing differences that between the genders that are somewhat biological, but we wouldn't categorize them as sex. So we would categorize them as gender because they've become stereotypical of that sex, but they're also biological, right? So like, let's say like women in general look more for like, for how much a man makes when it comes to like how attracted they are. Like that is literally
gold digging bitches, correct.
That is the top priority for women when it comes to what is attractive about a man, is some sort of status like money, or, you know, his job, or, you know, how good he is at something or something like that. This is a difference that is not necessarily, we wouldn't categorize this as sex, but it is somewhat biological. And so it's at like a 97% rate. So like, and it's all across the entire world. So like it seems to be biological, but it's not sex. So we would categorize this as gender because now it's stereotypical of that sex. So we would classify it as gender. You saying a gender is abolished doesn't mean that like we stop recognizing that pattern exists. That pattern will still exist. We will still acknowledge it. We'll just end up labeling it something else. And this is like my biggest issue with people, is they don't understand how like words and concepts come about and how we end up like categorizing these things. But that's like, yeah, that's why people talking about abolishing gender is so frustrating, is that like they don't even understand what it is they want to abolish in the first place. They have no idea what it is that they're so upset about.
Okay. That all sounded really good. I don't really know how to respond. I'm just going to say that you're correct about all that, probably. I don't know.
Well, I showed tons of studies in there showing like tons of differences, especially like in the first 6 months of life, like the differences between boys and girls. You can't make an argument that these kids have been socialized in the first 6 months of their life. Like, yes, kids recognize gender within the first 2 years of their life, but not within the first 6 months. Yeah, we can still see big differences where like, girls are more likely to gravitate towards pink Barbie dolls, whereas boys are more likely to gravitate towards red fire trucks. And a lot of this is actually consistent with trans people with gender dysphoria. And so the reason I brought this up is because Destiny has gone like full trans med now, even identifies as trans med, right? Yet, like, I feel like there's this gender dysphoria that exists somewhat on a spectrum, to where we should still include people that aren't diagnosed with gender dysphoria as trans, because it seems as though they still have something driving them to identify as a different gender, right? There's still something like within them driving them to go through a process to be identified as a different gender. And the that's never been me and Steven's like relationship. It's always been like business between the two of us. So I don't think that we're ever gonna debate this. But I don't. Have you heard his transmed takes?
I can't say that I have. I've heard some of his takes. I didn't know he was calling himself transmedical. Because transmedical is the position that in order to be considered trans, you have to have some sort of medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know if Destiny believes that.
He's said I've heard him say it 3 times now that he is transmed now, that he identifies as transmed, that he thinks the experience between somebody who has gender dysphoria and somebody who doesn't is so drastically different that you can't put them in the same box together. I'm sure his manifesto is going to cover this to some extent, but I just think he's wrong that like other people who aren't diagnosed with gender dysphoria don't have it to some extent. It's just not like the definition of a mental illness, I think, is when you get to a point to where you can't exist within society without some sort of like medical intervention, right? So you can have gender dysphoria, but still have the capability of existing within society without a medical intervention. And therefore you don't need a diagnosis or anything else attached to it. And I would still say that you're trans, even though it's not a mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the debate though, like, surely you could set up a debate with him, no?
I don't know. The last couple times I've tried, he's been weird about it. So, yeah.
Has he?
Yeah.
Tell me more. Sounds like drama.
They're like throughout the process of like making the documentary and like communicating with him, he's a busy guy, like he doesn't answer me. But if I'm talking about the documentary, or I'm like, hey, I'm doing this panel, want to come on, or hey, I'm going to set up a debate between you and this other person, like he answers me every time just like this. But if I'm like, hey, I have a disagreement with you on this, like, can we set up a debate sometime? I will get nothing. And I can message him like 5 minutes later and be like, hey, think about the documentaries, answer that right away, but still ignore the other things. So it's, I think that that's just been like the way that our relationship has existed the entire time. Is it's always been like setting him up with panels, or setting up an interview, or setting up an AMA, or setting up like different things to where him and I have never actually ended up having any sort of debate. So yeah, I don't know.
Would you say that he's perhaps scared of talking to you about this because you're going to absolutely demolish him?
Probably. I mean, I am.
Yeah.
He knows that I'm a debate coach and that this is my like main focus, and I think that scares him. Yeah. No. I mean, in reality, I Destiny is like the standard of a debater. So I have lots of disagreements with him politically, but I review his debates more than anybody else's, because anybody else's at this point is just hard to watch.
Who's the worst debater?
Did you see him debate Synth?
Yes, I did.
That like I had already had a bunch of issues with Synth in the past before that, where I kept saying, I'm like, bro, you just don't understand anything. Like, I think you're just so blinded by your bias that you don't understand like anything you're saying. And had more of those fights and conversations with him on Twitter afterwards, and I think that he would be probably the worst one that I can think of. That was the worst debate I'd ever seen. That, if for anybody who doesn't know who Synth is, he did the what was it? Guilt by association debate with Destiny, where it's like Destiny for like 2 hours straight, just trying like very nicely to explain to this guy what guilt by association is, and he's not picking it up. I was laughing my butt off the entire time watching that. But yeah. Is the other person coming?
Well, they said they wanted to talk about abortion, but it feels like we've moved on. But I mean, they're still welcome to pop in. I was kind of waiting for them to come back. So
yeah, I'm still down for whatever.
And then after that, we'll probably wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if they still want to come on, hop in the group. Oh, here we go. Hello.
Yo, what's good?
Dr. Butler, how's it going?
What's poppin'? I'm at work, so try not to say anything that's gonna get me fired, right?
Gotcha.
No worries.
So you know what I fucking hate?
What's that?
Talking about abortion. So like, here's the thing with abortion. It's like, with any other like hot button issue, it's like there's some sort of empirical evidence that you can point to make your case, right? Like you're talking about the minimum wage. You could always be like, look at Australia. They have like a $20 minimum wage. Their Whoppers only went up like 5 cents or some shit. But with like abortion, that's more of like a philosophical thing. You know what I mean? It's like very subjective. So when you're arguing about abortion, it's like you might as well be debating if like God is real. It's like you're not really gaining any ground.
I think that you can rhetorically. So I think if you can get people to care about one thing over the other. So like lots of people who are pro-life, they just like care about life and they think that life is intrinsically valuable and blah, blah, blah. But if you could get them to care about the struggles of the mother more so and what it is she's going to have to go through if she doesn't get the abortion, or what that kid's life is going to be like, or even like in general, how it could harm society to not have abortion available to some people. Like, I think that if you're able to switch to like a rhetorical argument and just get them to care about the harm that comes with it, then I think that like that's gonna make a difference. The problem is that it's obvious that anybody who's pro-life is working on like a completely fundamentally different landscape of morality than somebody who's pro-choice, because one's gonna like care about the outcomes and the other one thinks there's like intrinsic value there that you can't just brush off. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It feels like there is a strong like religious angle to it. Is something you like very often see. And I don't know. I mean, in some cases, yeah, it does feel like you can push people in that direction in like certain edge cases. But generally, the angle they're coming at it from is like the fetus is alive, that's a soul, so on and so forth. And we'll just sort of like on a blanket level kind of just be against it. I don't know. I do feel like it's one of those things that you can't really make like a hard and fast case for. You were saying?
I disagree. I hear this a lot on Twitch, especially, that like people always say, oh, well, anybody who's pro-life, like they're coming at this from some sort of religious angle. And I've been in like pro-life advocacy for a long time, and I never see it. I never see like the religious arguments or the religious angles to it. Like, I think that people normally like come to these positions pretty logically, especially abortion, when it's been talked about in the zeitgeist for like anybody who is alive right now their entire lives. Like, pretty much we've all heard about it nonstop, and we've all thought about this and really like tried to rationalize our positions on it. I don't think that it is as religious as lots of people would like to think.
Yeah, I mean that is true. You make a valid point, but like you said, it comes down to like, when do you think, like, what do you consider to be like life, right? And that's a philosophical thing. Like regardless of religion, it's like there's some people who don't consider certain species of animals to be alive. They're like, oh, is a rat sentient? Is it alive? I don't know. You know, God, I wish I prepared. But it's like you could draw that line really anywhere, and it varies from person to person. If you ask 10 different people, like, when does life begin, you're going to get 10 different answers. There's some people are going to be like, well, you can't waste your sperm because that's a potential human. And then, like, you could go very far either way. It's like everyone is somewhere on that spectrum, and it's hard to like write law based on something that's so like tenuous and subjective.
Well, I hear this a lot in that it's like, oh well, nobody. Chud said it a little bit ago. It is a philosophical question to ask when life begins, but I think for anybody who's going to give any sort of definition of life or like give some sort of description of it, a fetus will normally always fall into it. If you believe grass is alive or animals are alive or anything that we would call life is alive, it would normally apply to a fetus. The question is rarely actually about life. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, where they believe there's this intrinsic value to life, but the other side doesn't actually care whether or not it's a life. They can acknowledge it's a life all they want. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has personhood. And so normally the argument, like, I've done 100, 200 pro-life debates. I don't think I ever debated whether or not something is a life, because for the most part, we all agree on it. Even science seems to have like a pretty standard take that like a fetus is a life. It just isn't. It just isn't a person, or it doesn't have personhood. And so normally that's where the argument's going to revolve around.
Yeah, I mean, I should clarify. Yes, it's alive because it's like organic tissue. But yeah, I mean like sentient, like human, like fully human. Like where that line is drawn is arbitrary, because like there's premature babies. They're born like 7 months or some shit. They survive. They become a person, but it's like it's subjective, and I don't really think. I don't think that you can ever really, what is the word I'm looking for? There's never going to be an agreement on this. Like, I feel like it's one of those things, because it's so subjective. You can't really convince someone either way. You can't push anyone. You know what I mean?
I don't know. The conservatives in Chud's country seem to all agree that like there's nothing wrong with abortion. So it seems to just be an us problem here in America.
Well, I think the reason for that is because there's a kind of a stronger, like, there's no doubt that the abortion thing comes from a place of religiosity, right? And I think there's a stronger voice for like fundy Christians in America, whereas here, I think there are people who, along Catholic routes, will be opposed to abortion, but there is a lot more respect for the fact that we've got a law that's been passed that allows abortions, and they kind of feel that Parliament has decided the issue, and they're not going to shed political capital by pushing the issue, even though they personally believe it. Basically, that makes sense.
Yeah,
again, you go.
Here, my biggest issue has just been Roe versus Wade. Like I've studied that thing tons since I was a kid, and I was very happy that it like came back up as a topic, because I know all about Roe versus Wade, and I know all about Roe, and I know all about Casey, and like I understand all of these things very well. And I do have an issue with something within the Constitution that is, we all agree, a bad ruling, but most people will be like, oh, but it's precedent. So like, in other cases have been built off of it. So like, we got stare decisis now, and we just need to leave it alone. I have an issue with that when it comes to something that is a human rights issue. And regardless of whether you're talking about the mother's rights or the fetus's rights, this is a human rights issue. And I don't think that we can have something on the books that is unconstitutional or an incorrect ruling and just be like, just leave it. Like, it's fine. I don't think that I can sit happy with that. But I do think that it'll be back in the Constitution just through other means.
All right.
Okay. Well, was that everything?
Oh, yeah, just about.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, mate. Pleasure as always.
Yeah, of course. All right, I'll take care.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.
I completely agree with Dr. Butler, though. I stopped doing like abortion debates, really, because it is so subjective. It's the same debate over and over and over. It doesn't, like, I don't learn anything from them. I don't gain anything from them. I just have my perspective and my line of reasoning, and they have theirs, and it's just like there's nothing to even like there's no like intersection where we can actually come to some middle ground. It doesn't exist. So
Yeah, it's probably one of the most like contentious and divided issues, and it does seem like people just aren't interested in finding that space in the middle where you can agree. You know,
is there
either
moral?
you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say it's like, you know, either you are just a madman that wants to control women's bodies, or you're a vicious murderer who wants to slaughter babies, and there's no in between. Sometimes it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate that argument that like people just want to control women's bodies or something like that, because rarely do I actually see that like even to be likely the case. I'll say I debated Tyler Bluntman on this a while ago, and that was like the last person I debated on it because it seemed so pointless after that. But I would say that dude pretty objectively hates women. Like that guy does not like women for sure, and he just seems to want to punish them. But is there any sort of like stigma from the conservative group? Like you're saying, okay, they all agree, like there's a standard, it's all been decided by parliament, so it's set, no problem. But is there like some sort of moral stigma that they attach to this at all?
I'd say that's more of an extreme position over here. I think that our views on abortion are broadly more progressive. And yeah, there isn't the same sort of political fervor that there is over there to oppose it. You know, if someone came out and staked a position on, I'm going to overturn the Abortion Act 1967 or whatever it's called, I don't think you get many people that would, you know, would take issue with that. Sorry, would support that. I mean, like most people would be like, "What the fuck are you doing? What a waste of time!" You know, campaign on, I don't know, whatever. Not that. That's not going to work.
Yeah, it's the same in Canada as well. They seem to have like a pretty consistent stance regardless of what party you're a part of. So yeah, it really seems like just a United States issue.
I just want to respond to this quite a lot. Don't you think people just won't say that their reasoning is that they want to punish women because that's indefensible? Well, it's just there's a much easier explanation for their belief, and it's that they think that is their belief is that that fetus is a life, and they think it's murder. That makes far more sense than they're trying to do some crypto like, I really hate women, but I'm going to use this to argue my position. You know, like I say, for some it's a nice bonus. Don't get me wrong, some people do have that view, but you know, on the whole, it is a more principled position that differs from yours about when life begins.
I mean, like I said, with Tyler Bluntman, at no point did he actually say that he hates women. That he never actually said that, but I know he does just from having a conversation with him, and the conclusions that he comes to, how badly he wants women to be punished, how hard he wants to make things on women, how like big of a deal he makes it if a woman has sex. Like all of this stuff leads me to a conclusion that it just seems pretty obvious this dude does not like women. Whereas like so I agree that like they're hiding that position to some point if that is their position, but it's just really unlikely. That's not a common position, especially not as common as being pro-life is. I don't think there's that many people who really hate women that much.